Hey guys, Bassmaster Elite Series Pro Mark Daniels Jr. Just finished up Lake Okeechobee, one of my favorite places to fish in the nation. Didn't treat me so well this time around. I ended up finishing in 65th place, but nevertheless, I'm still gonna walk you guys through what I did, how I caught them, and even some of the mistakes that I think that I made that ended up costing me finishing in 65th place. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. I ran down and I covered that entire lake in practice, man. I mean, I fished all over the place. A lot of the key areas that I like to fish down on the south end of the lake were muddied up. We had some wind coming out of the west pretty much all through practice, and it turned up a lot of that stuff on the outer edge. Got that water really churned up and dirty. And if you've ever fished down on Lake Okeechobee, those bass do not like dirty water. So I ended up falling back on, which most guys did, the Harney Pond area, which is always a hot area when you go to Lake Okeechobee. You just have a large number of fish in that particular area, and the water tends to stay clear. So obviously the bass gravitate towards that, and there's a lot of good healthy grass in there. You got the eelgrass in there, you got the hydrilla mix, and that really makes for a good habitat for these fish. So I was down in that area, and actually I caught a lot of my fish this time around on topwater. I generally go down to Florida a little earlier than we went this time, and these fish were a little further along into the spawn. I usually catch them mainly flipping when I go down there, but this time they were a little further into the spawn, so I had to change things up a little bit. And this bait right here, man, every fish I think I caught on day one that I weighed, I had 15.5 pounds, something like that, I caught on this bait right here. This is a Rapala X Pop. And it's in yellow perch is the color. You know, it's just a great color that works for me down there. There's another color that works really good too called, I think it's called Olive Shad, something like that. But this is the one that I was using, the exact bait. And this is a very, very tricky bait, man. You lose at least half the fish you get to come up, you end up losing on this bait. But it was one of those deals when they're spawning, this is just something that they can't stand on top of them. So it was really hard for me to get those fish to bite on some plastics and things like that, but they would come up on this top water, so I had to keep throwing it. And it's a very simplistic bait. You cast it out and over expansive grass flats where these fish are spawning in the holes, and you just give it pops in between, 5-6 seconds, pause, pop it again, pop it twice, and pause. And if that thing stops on the top of one of those bedding bass, they're coming to get it. A couple key little features and tips that you need to know when throwing prop baits. I would say pretty much for all prop baits. First thing you need to do is make sure you change the hooks. These are, I changed these out to owner stingers, 1-time strong. It's a little thicker gauge hook. It holds the bass a little bit better in my opinion. And even then, when they bog you down in that hydrilla, you're still gonna lose some of them. But as you can see there at the very tip of that bait, I have a bobber stop, and that bobber stop is about a 1/2 inch out in front of my bait. And the reason I do that is to prevent my line from catching in that front hook like this when I'm fishing that top water. It's a huge nuisance when you tie direct braid straight to this particular bait. You often get that line caught in that front hook, and it just makes you reel it in, take it off over and over and over again. You mess your cast up. So putting a bobber stop about a 1/2 inch out in front of that bait helps. And also what I do is I'm throwing this setup on braid. I got 40-pound Seaguar Smackdown braid, but very important, I have about 12 inches here, about 12.5, 13 inches of Seaguar ripping mono, 20-pound. Now the mono is stiffer than the braid. It also floats. It gives me a little bit of cushion, so when that fish crushes it and he swims down into the grass, it gives me a little bit of cushion there so I can still land those bass. Let's talk setup. I'm throwing this on a Kistler Magnesium. This is a medium heavy action rod. And the reason I chose the medium heavy action is because I'm fishing around tons of hydrilla. Like I said, as soon as those fish hit that bait, they bog you down in that hydrilla. And here's another key for you. Don't try to he-man them out of the grass and try to heave-ho and pull them. You're gonna lose even more. Put the trolling motor on high, troll the motor over to where the fish is, get directly on top of them, power pole down and ease them up, and then go ahead down and grab them. I found that technique to work a lot better to me than trying to pull like this and eventually end up coming off and you end up losing them. So give these tips a try when you guys go down to Florida. Works really good for me on all the Florida lakes. Toho, the Kissimmee chain, Okeechobee obviously, Harris chain, you name it. Down in Florida, it's just a great technique when those bass are spawning. Another setup that I used a lot when I was down there. This is something I always have tied on when I'm down in Florida. When it comes time to flip, again, spawning in Florida and flipping mats kind of go hand in hand generally. It wasn't as strong as I wanted it to be this go around, but I did catch several fish flipping into the mats, and this was more so in the monkey box area. Dead hyacinth, dollar grass, old lily pads, chopped up stems, and what have you. Blowing into those cattails was the deal. And anytime I'm punching mats down in Florida, that right there is going to be my #1 bait of choice, and that's a missile bait, missile craw. I got a punch skirt on there. I alternate it between 1 ounce and 1.5 ounces depending on the thickness of the cover. And this right here, I got some key bites on day 2 when I was really struggling. I think only weighed 9 pounds, but you know, this is a bait that gets bit, and it also catches really big fish. And I alternate it between the missile craw and the baby D-bomb. When it tend to be a little bit more loud hearing, when it tend to be a little more loose canopy, I would throw the baby D-bomb. When it would get more condensed, heavier, I would alternate to the missile craw. And the missile craw is awesome because it has a really narrow head, and so that's what really helps that bait penetrate. It doesn't have a bunch of appendages hanging off of it, yet it still has a great crawfish profile, and these little tentacles right here give it some great action, and that gets you a lot of good strikes. Last but not least, again, when those fish are spawning, it's something about topwater that really gets them excited. And I was also catching some fish on a frog, and this is a snag-proof fat frog. Papa Midnight is the color, which is basically just an all black. Silhouette's really good, and in those pads you can twitch this thing around. Again, you come across one of those holes in the pads, and she's spawning down there, and that frog comes walking, and you pause it. They just can't handle that. They come up and they boom, they blow up on that thing. So this was another key bait in that monkey box area. You know, the frog didn't work for me as well out in the Harney Pond area. That was more of a topwater deal with the prop bait, but when I got back into the monkey box and there was tons and tons of pads, I started getting more strikes on the frog. So that pretty much wrapped up my tournament, man. Like I said, I had a pretty tough go. I didn't get a ton of bites. I lost 2 key fish on day 2 that ended up costing me, but again, that's the game, man. Anyways, I appreciate you guys following, checking me out on social media here on YouTube. Please subscribe to my channel. I'm going to continue to do these recaps. I'll have tip videos. If you guys have something you want to see that I haven't discussed or talked about, whether it's tips or knot tying or you name it, you know, drop me a comment in the comment section and I'll try to get that handled for you guys. Thank you. Catch you guys on the water.